So, dear friends, we are today to talk a little bit about the Solicitors qualifying examination and its advantages and its difficulties, and how we can support as well your journey to qualify as a solicitor in England and Wales. And here with me today, two our mentors, because they actually went through this process themselves and they have this first-hand experience. But let's, while introducing yourself, if you could a little bit tell us as well how it changed your life, the qualification.
Aastha, you go first.
Hi, my name is Aastha Gopikrishna. I am Indian qualified, and then of course I qualified in the UK, in England and Wales. Right now I live in Frankfurt for last actually 10 years. I work in the area of IT legal and data privacy with an asset manager in Frankfurt. As far as how it changed my life, it was a life changing for me to do the exam. Don't want to sound dramatic, but it was quite character building. It was quite tough back when I did the exam. I was almost 5 years ago now. I was working. I was traveling to London for work and also studying together. So all of it like combined required a lot of discipline, a lot of values which I had to build, which are also now helping me in my journey as a lawyer. So that is about me. Ishita.
Hello, guys. I'm Ishita Luthra, and I am a dual qualified lawyer in UK and India. I work with a law firm and I specialize in business laws and corporate laws. I qualified in India in 2013, and I was working in law firms in Mumbai, practicing in private M&A and general corporate. When I moved to the UK, obviously, because I'd been practicing for about 6 years before I came to the UK, so I felt that I need to qualify as a UK solicitor, which is why I enrolled for the exam, and I came across Olga's prep notes, and we'll talk about it a bit later. But yeah, as in when I qualified, that was in 2021, and I think it's definitely helped me. It's a skill set altogether, I would call it. It's not just about clearing an exam, it's actually building and improving yourself as a professional, as a legal professional. And it's not only helped me in understanding laws of different jurisdictions, it's also helped me make my communication skills better. So it's, really rounded, helps in a really rounded up personality, I would say. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Girls, let's talk a little bit about our experiences and let's try to help our audience to tackle those issues. I'll start with the first issue, which is volume of information. What would you recommend and how have you coped with this 14 subjects? It's a lot of things to learn. Plus you have your own jurisdiction and knowledge from your own jurisdiction. How is it, in general terms, how is it different from Indian law? It's still common law system.
At the outset, it seems like, yeah, they're similar. Contract law indeed is a starting point, is quite similar. But the way we study in India is different from the way this exam requires you to study, right? And that's just my personal experience. And I've also spoken with a lot of friends. In India, when we are in a law school, the end goal is to, of course, get this coveted job in a law firm. And there are various ways to achieve that in India. You could be doing internship, connections, pass mark, or getting like the best mark is not the only way to achieve that end goal. Or to pass like a bar exam is not the only way to, rather actually it's not the way to get the best law firm job, right? In Germany, where I am based now, I also speak with German lawyers, also in UK. The end goal, of course, is to get the job, but there is a surety that if you get the highest grade, at least in Germany, you will have better chances. I think that is quite different because the end goal is, of course, the same, but to achieve it is different in different jurisdictions, right? What it does in India is that because getting the highest mark or getting through the bar exam is not the only way, you are thinning yourself in various ways. You are doing moot courts, internships, you are finding creative ways to get the job. that actually is very different for what this exam requires. In this exam, you need to be very structured, organized from the get-go. And that, I would say, is the was the learning for me as well when I came for my master's in finance and law in Germany, that you have to really, from the start, you have to be very organized. Before the lecture, you have to read the lecture materials, you have to participate, because everything matters towards the getting of the marks. So that would be the difference. Maybe Ishita, you want to also talk about the differences in your experience, and then we can tackle the tips.
Yeah, sure. I'll just add something like a bit more about my experience. See, in India, what I've seen mostly, especially in terms of when we have written exams in unis and all, right? People focus a lot on cramming information and kind of really copy pasting that from memory on the paper, right? Obviously, there are practical aspects, like you mentioned, Aastha, like moot courts and, other activities which involve a lot of speaking, which is obviously kind of advocacy and client interview aspects of the SQE as well. But in India, although if you've just passed out of law school, you may have passed your exams by memorizing things. Okay. But SQE is more about knowing the concept, having that clarity, because the first part, the SQE1, is about multiple choice questions. And given that the time is really limited, you need to know the concept. If you have clarity in the concept, and it's a best answer, it's not the right answer. So you will be able to mark that correctly. So I feel like instead of, memorizing things, if you use flashcards, sorry, yes, I'm just saying tips here because it just goes with it. Yeah, if you make your own notes, if you use flashcards, so to kind of, make something active in your head in terms of the concept, that'll be really helpful in my view. And that's how I tackled, because if we see our notes here, they are very concise and to the point. So for example, like in one of the slides, Olga was sharing, it's about what is a company. It's like a separate legal entity. Yeah, exactly there. So you've got all the, keywords there. You've got all the critical things there, which give you clarity about that concept. So if you had to answer something based on this concept in the SQE1, it would be really quick rather than, going the traditional way of memorizing each and every bit. So that's my take on this.
That's great. That's great. Coming back to the question of the actual jurisdictions, it's just really interesting to me, because India is very much common law country, is actually completely common law country, and a lot of laws were taken from England, right? So does it reduce the volume of the material to some extent? Was it, I mean, I'm coming from civil law jurisdiction. I had actually to distinguish and even to relearn, which I think makes it even more difficult than just learn from scratch. But in your case, many things that you know are pretty relevant to the actual areas of practice that we cover here in the exam.
Yes, so in my view, Olga, I think there are similarities in terms of, say, the contract law, tort law, and business law aspects as well, because it's derived from common law. So in terms of the concepts, for example, in contract law, you have a proposal, you have consideration, right? And that makes a contract after acceptance, obviously. So it's similar, but obviously the law is different. And you are judged on the law. You don't have to cram up sections here, which is great, right? Because they're common law principles. It could be derived from case law as well. So yeah, there are similarities between few laws, which was great for me because I could draw an analogy like what's different in India and what's different here. So it helps me distinguish. So it gives us a better understanding. But obviously there are other aspects of law which are completely different, like property law, admin law, dispute resolution, criminal and civil litigation, wills, so they're really distinct. But I did find that contract, tort, and I think company law was likely, the concepts were obviously, the principles, legal principles were similar.
Then related question, to which subject or subjects you would actually suggest people from your legal background to pay more attention? What is more, challenging and time consuming as well?
Absolutely. So in my view, because I had come from a background in corporate law, right? And I've been practicing for about 6-7 years before I took the exam. So I was very comfortable with business laws and company law. But I think most of the people, the study groups that I was in, people weren't comfortable with that. So definitely business and business law and practice and property law, because it's entirely different from what it was in India. In India, it was pretty simple, but in the UK, it's got a lot of concepts, especially with joint tenants and tenants in common and all of that, right? So it was quite distinct. And I think the other one was land law and trust law also. They were pretty unique and distinct, and because they had their own legal principles, which I had to kind of really first understand and then apply. So I think these four, one would find quite different from the Indian jurisdiction.
Right. You may have a kind of same concept of covenants and easements, but the way they are actually regulated is different. That's
Yes.
what I understand. Aastha, what about you? Which areas, which subjects, let's say, out of all of those, you think you struggle the most, and maybe you may have some suggestions to the students that
I think property law, I struggle the most because the concepts are quite, they require you to understand it very deeply, the concepts. And if you really don't have experience in this area, you need to really put in the effort of understanding each concept. I also thought that business law would be easy because I work in the area of business law and work in a corporation and so on. But it was very surprisingly tricky as well for me. What I think contract law is similar with India, but because of this back in the UK being part of the EU, there are new concepts as well. So how I see it is the Indian law stayed where it in the past, but the UK law sort of, or laws of England and Wales, move forward with the whole European Union regulations and so on. So that makes it a bit challenging, in my opinion.
Actually, if to summarize, I would say you think we can subdivide all the subjects into two groups as we have on the slide. So we have substantive law and we have areas of practice. So eventually business law and practice, property law, disputes, everything what the girls mentioned comes into this part. So actually, maybe the focus should be there. And it's harder really to land those practice areas. They are called practice areas because there's a huge practical element. Like property, for example, you should be able to deduce the title, to make searches, this is all this crazy, or draft the claims forms in particulars. And even if it's a multiple choice question, it may be very practical. In the multiple choice questions, you can have a piece of some draft, and then you have 5 options to choose. Yeah. So coming back to the actual problem that we have so lot of information to cover. 4 years, classically, people study in the UK, 3 years LLB plus 1 more year of something which LPC or equivalent. How to keep all of that in mind? And Ishita is absolutely right. You don't have time to think. You should have it at your fingerprint during the multiple choice question. So maybe you have some study tips. Obviously, people who do not prepare with us, they don't have access to lectures and notes, but maybe you can suggest something additionally alternative. And in general terms, your exam preparation techniques, if you could share.
I think for me, reinforcement method works the best. What it means is that for example, let's say contract laws, I would just, at the first set, I would just go through the text, and then I will do something different. So if I've gone through the text, I will then watch videos, or I would do practice questions or make my own notes and then visit the text. For me, it is very important, or maybe it is a long-winded process, but for me, it is very important that I understand and I resonate with the concepts. Because for me to feel confident, I need to understand the concept. And to understand a concept, there is no other way than to revisit it multiple times. So this is the method of reinforcement. I watched a lot of YouTube videos on how to study efficiently, and I think that has worked for me, not just in this exam, but also in other exams which I have taken in the last 5 years. Yeah, so that would be my one tip, is to use multiple ways of studying a concept. And then the second one would be to find some people who are studying together, support groups, or that helped me as well, to have this way of checking in with your study partner, maybe to discuss a difficult concept. That also helped. And the third would be, if I look at this list here, I would say there's a chance that a lot of people are not I'm not going to spend a lot of time in accounts. And I took it as a challenge. Then I said, okay, if I want to really get the pass mark or get like a good grade, I have to do something different. And what I did was I spent a lot of time, because I also had accounting as minor because I did my LLM finance. I spent a lot of time in doing accounting. It did give me a lot of, I would say, a good cushion to make mistakes in other areas, because I knew in accounting they will not ask super difficult questions. They will ask questions which are basic, because it's not something which lawyers are studying. So that would be my third tip, to find a way to channel your own, I would say, areas of law you most comfortable in, and then yeah, that would be the third.
That's an interesting point about accounts. Actually, it also seems to me from the breakdowns that I've seen, people who fail, they come for us help, like we do some diagnostic, etc. So statistically, it's just my statistics, it's not very representative, etc. But what I've seen, people actually perform better in accounts, and maybe it's a good strategy as well. I mean, it's a small mark. It's an element of legal system, I think, but like a subject area, but solicitors accounts, the subject is named. But actually, it may be a good point, really, don't ignore tax.
Don't ignore, I would say, because you would be very surprised that a lot of people ignore, because they have never had this experience with accounting or with solicitor's account, and then that gives you an edge, right? And in the end, it is a bell curve method, and the judgment is against everyone who's performing in the exam. So that would be to bring yourself give a bit cushion and an edge. Yeah.
Yeah, and to pick up from there, I think obviously accounts, and there's also professional ethics, which is a simple topic, but it's really important because SRA want to ensure that you are bound by the ethical code, the SRA code that they have prescribed. So accounting, yes, and even professional ethics, I think they're simple subjects, but then they can actually help you get a lot of marks if you answer them correctly. And to answer this question, Olga, my view is that first, obviously, you need to get good course material. I mean, you can buy those big books but ultimately you will come down to some sort of course material from a provider. And then you take all the subject and see the ones that you're most comfortable with, right? And which you can possibly go through quickly, or, you're good at. Like, for example, for me, it'll be contract law or business laws, which I resonate because I've been practicing in that for the past few years. And then I follow like an inverted V kind of an approach, which is first you get all your course material sorted, then you go through it. And as you kind of get more confident with the concepts, then you obviously create your own notes. So you sift down information like in an inverted V. So you create your notes, then you create flashcards, and then you do mock tests. Mock tests, I can't stress enough on that because they actually help you think and see what is the best answer. And as I think I can't stress enough on how important mock questions are. And then towards the end, if you feel you're stuck somewhere, get guidance. I mean, the course providers obviously have tutor services, so you can always go back to them with questions or concepts that you don't understand. And yeah, I think following this, it helped me in my approach and my exams, because to be honest, in my first exam, my first MCQ, I failed it because I was trying to do everything. And then in my second attempt, I did try to structure it in this manner, and it really helped me.
Yeah, that's true. Organization is a big part, and then it's completely possible to prepare for this exam on your own. But for this reason, you have to do all these extra bits and be very well organized. And actually, I like this idea of revisiting the materials that Aastha said, because actually study is a torture. You can't do anything. It's a torture, really. We have to force ourselves to do something which is boring, and we already know it, but you have to memorize it. If you don't remember different options, you won't be able to choose the single best one as well. I actually completely agree with Ishita, is that doing the mocks is the key, because actually in the exam, you're not going to reproduce the law, like to explain it or something. You are going to pick up option, and you need to train yourself to do that. And I think this is something I would spend last 2 months or something before the exam, just practicing and practicing, revising and practicing. The problem with this is that the questions turn to be way more difficult than they were. And the questions now in the SQE1 are more difficult than we used to have in QLTS MCT, even though the approach and everything is very similar. Just because students many candidates received exemptions from the SQE2, I think that's one of the reasons. Also, people come for the exam unprepared. I've heard it from many that students, that they talked to someone in the exam, and people just prepared on their own somehow, and they thought, because they've heard also from some providers that it's easy. It's not easy. It's not an easy exam. It's changed, especially SQE2. SQE2, as I do agree, is very practical, and it's something which actually makes you a better lawyer, because you have to be able to do so many things. So yeah, what about psychological element of that? Like, Ishita, you are great. You said that you failed.
Yeah.
I mean, many people actually struggle to say, for them it's such an ego point, especially for lawyers, to be able to overcome. But this happens, and this is. Tell us a little bit more. I should say one thing, my friends. Ishita also is an author of a book about mental health, and she is mentoring people to help them, to overcome different difficulties. And it's very much linked to spirituality and yoga, right? Tell us a few things about that. Let's talk about this psychological element.
Sure, Olga. I think it's very daunting as it is the exam, because of the competency and difficulty level of the exam, right? So when I kind of enrolled for it, I was like confident. I was thinking, no, I'm going to crack it. Like, I'm going to study it, cramp everything, and I'm going to take the MCT and clear it, right? But what happened? I failed. And then I realized that, no, I need to prepare more. I need to be smarter in what I study and what I kind of take out, right? So, and I hadn't given myself enough time to prepare. Like I think I sat it in January, and I started my prep probably in October the previous year. So I didn't give myself enough time. So there were learning lessons, but I didn't get deterred by it. I said, because this is something I really want to do, and no matter how much time it takes, may take me a year to do both the exams, or year and a half, but I was willing to give my 100%. And yeah, it looks difficult, but it's achievable. If we can do it, so can you. So, but you need the right strategy, you need to be consistent, and you need to keep telling yourself that it's not impossible, and also it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You'll be waking up every day, studying heaps of stuff, then sleeping and waking up the next day doing the same thing. It can get monotonous. So don't let yourself be bogged down or pressured by it. Enjoy the journey. If you enjoy what you're studying, what you're learning, and at the end of it, look at the brighter side, you will evolve as a much better and much, skilled lawyer. Your professional career will, your growth, your understanding of everything, it will really expand your horizon. So you have to look at the bigger picture here and then take it from there. Otherwise, it's going to be stressful. You're going to be saying that, oh, what am I doing in my life? Like, I'm just sitting here studying, where my friends are like just going out, having a good time. But you have to really, have perspective if you really want to do this exam.
Yeah, psychological element is a huge part of the preparation, because eventually you can be super prepared, but when you go there and your hands are shaking and you actually do something wrong, that is a little bit a problem. Aastha, how you coped with this psychological element in the actual exam, and how did you prepare yourself? What would you?
Yeah, I was lucky also have friends who are into yoga or meditation. You would be surprised. I have never thought about it after. So I did a lot of yoga and meditation, but even before the exam, I went for a massage on my neck because I had so much stress in my neck. Even when I was in London, I went for the massage to release the tension. So I really did apply a lot of methods to get the tension release from my system. I tried to sleep as much as possible before the exams. It was hard. I focused on getting the sleep rather than cramming last minute.
Can
So
I step in for a sec? Actually, sleeping is an important thing. In the past, there was an issue that few people took some pills, which are kind of, I think they give you a lot of energy. It's like some energetics. And then they struggled really in the exam itself because they couldn't sleep well before the exam. This kind of pills help you to prepare because you have more energy, you don't sleep, but then you basically exhaust yourself very much, and these pills actually work against you. And anyway, never try anything like this just before the exam, because you don't know how your body is going to react. And sleeping is a so important thing. It's actually your brain otherwise is not going to work, though. Let's talk about other things. What about combining this preparation, how to structure it? How would you suggest to structure it when you also have other duties, when you have a heavy workload, or when you have a family as well? Maybe let's start with the family. Ishita recently became a mother. Maybe you can share a few tips how to combine, how you would actually suggest as to this element.
Yeah, sure. I think obviously as a working parent, it's really, crucial that you balance things. And one, to be honest, can never balance things. So you have to see how you can juggle your priorities. So obviously, with your child, you have to look after them and they are your priority at a certain age. But my experience has been that you have to really appreciate time. You if you get a certain time window, you have to appreciate and get your work done in that window. You can't kind of procrastinate or delay things because there is another aspect of your life waiting to be prioritized at that point. So it's never a balance for me. I think it's always juggling one over the other. And I think that's why this book that I've written, it's called The Inner Circuit, and it really helps you to kind of compartmentalize and prioritize. And instead of getting emotional and getting caught up in the moment, you just kind of zoom out of the situation and see what needs your attention. So I prioritize in according to that. And the second thing is, I can't stress enough about the support system around you. So I've got a lot of family support, so which kind of helps me do these other things. And especially when we are staying alone and we are studying as well as working, and if we have people around us like friends or family, then we should appreciate the help that they can give, and we should take that help as well, because this exam especially, it will require a lot of your focus, your time, and you need to also look after your health, your mental health in that, right, as well as juggling other things. So yeah, I think just compartmentalize in terms of your time, give importance to the time that you have. Also take out some me time for yourself where you can relax, sleep, do nothing as well. I think that's very important from a psychological perspective.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We forget about ourselves as well in all this process.
For sure.
If you exhaust yourself until this final date when you go and you actually sit either SQE1 or SQE2, you actually just you diminish your chances.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's not a sprint. Like, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to run and that's it. But it's a marathon. You have to live it every day, till you reach the finish line.
Yeah, Aastha, you had a fascinating career at the time as well when you prepared for the exams. You possibly, my friends, if you've had like something, this kind of abbreviations like OSCE, which is it's equivalent to SQE2, or MCT is equivalent to SQE1, because QLTS, the Qualified Lawyer Transfer Scheme, was a precursor of the SQE, and they basically tested it on us, on foreign qualified lawyers. So Asta, maybe a few tips from you, how you manage to work and at the same time to prepare for this exam, this marathon?
I mean, maybe it is boring, but I do believe to write my schedule every day, and I still do it on a paper. So I did allocate like, so back in the day, I was also traveling to London for work. So I would try to allocate time during my flights to London to study. Then in the evenings, I would always like on a weekday, I would try to allocate 1 hour, and then on the weekends I would really focus on the exam. I did not have much social life. I had support from my family for food and for daily household stuff, but I did not have much social life because I could not party on a Sunday and then study for the exam. So I did cut out a lot of things from my schedule.
How long did it take you altogether from the first day you decided you started to study, let's say, until you actually cleared both exams?
The